For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. President Joe Biden will meet with the families of 8 Americans presumed to be in Hamas captivity after its October 7th terrorist attack in southern Israel. The National Security Council says the president will guarantee them the U.S. will not stop trying to get them home today. A senior administration official says family members of all 8 will participate in the meeting. In Israel, some of the families of hostages in Hamas captivity have criticized the war in Gaza, saying it's also putting their loved ones who are in Gaza at risk. The United Nations General Assembly has voted overwhelmingly to demand a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and a strong demonstration of global support for ending the Israel-Hamas war. The vote also showed the growing isolation of the United States and Israel. The vote in the 193-member world body was 153 in favor, 10 against, 23 abstained. Among those voting against it were the United States and Israel. Margot Pousset reports.
The resolution calls for an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war and for all parties to comply with international law. Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour called on the General Assembly to support the ceasefire resolution.
Stopping this war, stopping this carnage, saving lives, saving the lives of our children in the Gaza Strip, and the women and the civilians and the vulnerables. These are the most important elements. Everything else, we could deal with it later on, but that's not the time to deal with it. We need to stop this war, and we need to stop it now.
It also calls for humanitarian access to the hostages taken by Hamas during its October 7 attack on southern Israel, as well as their immediate and unconditional release. Israeli UN Ambassador Gilad Erdan said a ceasefire right now would only help Hamas to regroup and continue its war against Israel.
A ceasefire means one thing and one thing only: ensuring the survival of Hamas, ensuring the survival of genocidal terrorists committed to the annihilation of Israel and Jews.
For KPFA News, I'm Margot Pousset.
Global climate negotiations at the United Nations COP28 summit in Dubai ended with an agreement to transition away from planet-warming fossil fuels for the first time ever, though it lacks a clear timeline or directives of who will pay for the transition and what that looks like. The agreement does not call for a phase out of fossil fuels that more than 100 nations and climate justice advocates were pushing for. COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber gabbled through the text at a plenary session in Dubai before small island nations were even in the room. They're among the first frontline communities impacted by climate change and sea level rise. Brianna Fruin is a climate activist from Samoa.
I think the UNFCCC process is broken. I think we saw so many lobbyists here, and obviously while we are upset at the results, there's people here who are celebrating. Somebody here has had a successful COP, and that's the 2,000 lobbyists. And we're giving crumbs to celebrate, but it's like asking us to celebrate flowers that will lie on our graves. How do we celebrate that?
The agreement calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels and energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade. Oil-rich nations called it a success, like Saudi Arabia and the U.S. The deal also includes a call for tripling the use of renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency. The Republican-led House is pushing towards a vote to authorize the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, despite lack of evidence of misconduct by him. House Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team are facing growing pressure by their party to show progress in a near year-long probe centered around the business dealings of Biden's family members, with a focus on his son Hunter, who's faced addiction struggles. He railed against any impeachment inquiry of his father at the nation's capital this morning.
For 6 years, I have been the target of the unrelenting Trump attack machine, shouting, "Where's Hunter?" Well, here's my answer. I am here. Let me state as clearly as I can. My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad, and certainly not as an artist.
Max Pringle reports.
Oklahoma Republican Tom Cole chairs the Rules Committee. He said the Democratic-led first impeachment of then-President Trump in 2019 for pressuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to provide dirt on his likely election opponent, Joe Biden, set the ball rolling on this tit-for-tat impeachment proceeding.
What the then majority Democrats did in 2019 is now a precedent of the House of Representatives.
Rules Committee Democratic ranking member Jim McGovern of Massachusetts says the difference between this impeachment inquiry and the one against Trump in 2019 is that there was actually evidence that former President Trump abused his office. Not so this time around.
Not a single witness, not a shred of evidence that says Joe Biden did anything wrong. Every single Republican allegation has been debunked and discredited and disproven. Their own legal experts say there's not enough evidence to impeach.
I'm Max Pringle.
I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.